Welcome, heathens and witches, to the Horn
and Cauldron
podcast. Yeah, I'm John Norgrove. This is Julie Norgrove. We're here serving up witchy information
and hot takes
a la carte.
Witchy information, especially this.
Yeah.
Hot takes.
So, if you are new here, welcome. This is an asshole-free zone. So everybody is welcome. Everybody's allowed to share. Everybody's important. Nobody's better than anybody else. We are not experts. We are just doing research and sharing the things that we found with you. Our faiths differ. I mean, even our
Slightly,
practices differ, like between the two of us, but they probably differ from whatever norm. Anything you think could possibly be norm, like, just welcome to that being nuts.
So our word is not the end.
It's not the end all and be all, and it's not intended to be, and that's not the point of this. So if you're new here, we just share these. They come out every other week-ish. Sometimes they run late because real life is a thing.
Yes. And we both have day jobs.
Yeah. So if you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like this video, comment below, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that kind of stuff, whatever that is. If you are listening to this on your podcast network of choice, please leave a review. That's how we know whether or not you liked it or not. And if you would like to participate in a conversation or ask any questions or correct us on the way that we say a thing or what have you, go to the YouTube video and comment there. We will read those. I will read those. That's fine. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, stay tuned for more information about us, our Patreon, our Etsy shop, and all of those other things. Those will come at the end, right after the spells, which are written by us, as well as the correspondences, which is the thing that everybody likes. So stay tuned for more of that, and we're just gonna get right into it. Today we are talking about modern Odinism. And I know that is a heavy word, Odinism, and heathenry, and there's a bunch of bloody stuff to go on with that. But we are actually doing this at the request of one of our patrons, as well as I am sort of an Odinist. Yeah. Mostly an Odinist. Mostly an Odinist. I don't know. It's weird. I'm weird. Ignore me.
Yeah.
So now, that's what we're doing.
To be clear, before we get into this very chunky boy episode, we're
going to go fast.
We're going to go fast, first of all. Probably we're going to try to go faster than we normally do for our 5 recurring listeners. We're sorry, but also not, because you definitely did this to you, and we're happy that we're in this together.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit about, before we begin, why we chose the term Odinism for this. And there's a lot that goes into this, but essentially Odinism is a subsect, or even another word for heathenry, depending on what you exactly practice and who you're getting your information from. There is a lot of sources in heathenry, and in particular dealing with the Norse side of religion. So just know that in this episode, when we say heathenry, we primarily mean Norse and Germanic side of things, as opposed to general pagan stuff.
Think of it as heathenry as hot tub. Odinism is jacuzzi.
Yeah.
They're both hot tubs. Odinism's just a specific kind of hot tub.
Yeah. And we chose this partially because this is what John refers to himself as.
Yeah. I generally refer to myself as an Odinist because that's the easier way.
What our patron requested, specifically using that term, but also where we live, the term Odinism is not as charged with racism and white supremacist agenda.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna cut to the quick of it, because 1, not fast enough. 2, still not fast enough. Look at that, there were 2 of those. You didn't even catch up.
I didn't even see it coming.
3, though, fuck racists. So let me just put this out there. I don't have a problem with saying the word Odinism or Odinist, because I'm not referring to racists. I understand, and have gotten in some conversations online recently with people who say that it is maybe not worth defending the word Odinism or Odinist because of the racial connotations. And I think that primarily is a bit of a locality thing, right? So in America, a lot of Odinism and Odinist and Asatru and shit like that mean racist white people shit. And we are not talking about racist white people shit. I will never deal with racist white people shit. That's dumb. F them in the A, you know what I'm saying? But also, Odinism is just the ism of Odin. It's English. We don't let racists take shit over. This is like one of my things is like, we gotta not let racists just steal shit from other cultures because they assumed that they can get away with it, because they shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. That's what that is. So we're going to talk about heathenry. We're going to talk about Odinism. We're going to talk about Odinists. We're going to talk about a bunch of connected stuff around that. Understand that every time we say the word Odinism, Odinist, heathenry, Asatru, or anything vaguely Norse, what we mean is heathenry, comma, fuck racists, comma, the rest of the shit that we were saying.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you want to have a conversation with me in the things about why I think that we should defend these words from racists, that's fine. But, like, outside of this country, it's not really as associated with racism as it is within this country. And we live in California, which is totally different. Like, I've definitely met some, like, ex-white supremacist Odinists and shit. But, like, from our area, Odinism...
You met one at a comic book convention.
I did meet one at a comic book convention. We became very fast friends.
Yeah.
So that's its own thing. But I'm brown, if you're listening to this, by the way. So it's not like I became friends with a racist because I'm also racist. I'm not. I'm very anti-racist. Like, violently anti-racist. Do I hate racists so bloody much? They just make shit complicated for everybody else for no fucking reason. It's so dumb. Anywho. Yeah, so this is like no racist zone. Don't be a fucking racist. That's not what we're doing here. That's not what I'm doing here. And yeah, where I'm from, Odinism's just Odinism. It means that you worship Odin. Mm-hmm. It's got no racial connotations. And if it does, those people are steering way damn clear of me. And I'm covered in Norse tattoos. Hell, you can't see it now because you're either listening to it, so you can't see anything, or you're watching the video and you can see that my hair is long, so you can't see the ravens on the side of my head. But I have fucking ravens on the side of my head. Hell, my brother just got ravens tattooed on both of his shoulders on his back. So yeah,
and our wedding ring is a tattoo of Yggdrasil.
Yeah, so yeah, no racism here.
Yeah.
Go. Let's talk about heathenry.
So
racism out of the way.
So let's get started with this. So we're going to be intro. I know, right? 10-minute anti-racist video intro.
Ruining everything. Okay, go.
Yeah. So we're going to talk first a little bit about heathenry, and we're going to talk about Odinism, and we're going to kind of flip-flop sort of back and forth between generalities and then specifics about Odinism. But this is going to be a absolutely packed episode. Yeah. So let's get going. So heathenry was popularized in Europe during the Romantic period, which was the late 19th century into the early 20th century. And you can really sort of call heathenry technically a reconstructed religion. It was modeled on the pre-Christian religions in the Germanic area, which is sort of like the north and east.
Germany and plus.
It's like most of Europe, basically.
Yeah.
But not all of Europe.
Yeah.
And to sort of reconstruct this, they use surviving historical, archaeological information, as well as folklore, either ancient or still remaining to this day as its basis. There are a ton of smaller groups underneath the heathen umbrella. Some are focusing on certain sources, so some groups only focus on a very specific source, or very specific deities, or very specific practices from geographical areas. Yeah. Some only focus on the most ancient of ancient practices, and still more also incorporate things as they just sort of feel right.
Yeah, some are historical reconstructionists, some are like modernists that take a much more modern approach to it. Mm-hmm. Heathenry is a very umbrella style term.
Yeah. Yeah. So the most common sources to get this information from really are the Prose Edda and the Poetic Edda. Yeah. Which are two separate things.
Yeah. Yeah, as well as like just a bunch like carved rocks. Really?
Yeah.
Man, let me tell you what, like rune stones are an incredible source of information on this stuff.
There's a ton of things on it. And there's also a pretty good discovery channel or science channel series on Norse runestones that is on during the day when I am working from home. It's pretty cool. But there is no centralized or like official belief system throughout the heathen community. However, most heathens emphasize certain qualities. So they emphasize honor, integrity, and loyalty. Some specific sects also have ethical codes that range from simple rules or phrases such as "we are our deeds" to more complex lists like the 9 noble virtues. Now, as we mentioned before, and we're not going to beat this dead horse, but we're definitely going to beat this dead horse. There are groups that use heathenry as a part of their racist agenda and to further white supremacist ideals. And there are some that believe that race should limit who can practice heathenry, essentially believing that it is a closed practice. The terms vary throughout the world and throughout different things, and there's always more, right? So if you are interested in like using a particular term for yourself and your practice, but beyond the word heathen, definitely do your research and decide what term you're going to use for yourself, and understand who else may or may not be using that term, which is why we opened this with talking about why we chose the term Odinism. So do your research. However, folkish and tribal are terms that are typically used by people who believe that only those of Caucasian descent can be heathens. That's pretty standardized across the board. Folkish can also be Volkish with a V, and their beliefs also tend to be pretty racist and horrifying. But that's a closed practice I would rather not be a part of.
Don't support any closed practice. Honestly, the color of your skin denoting your faith is the stupidest bloody reason to do anything, man. Come on, guys. Holy shit.
We talk more about closed practices in our episode Toxic Internet Witchcraft, which is episode 22. So if you want to hear more about that, we also talk about it. We talk about a lot of different things there. Check that episode out. Now, in my research, almost all the terms used for heathen, other than the word heathen, and even sometimes then, they have been associated with racist agendas. So definitely, again, do your research.
They've been associated in one way or another, and again, it's sort of like so. In America, we have a Church of Asatru. There is a Church of Asatru. I don't remember exactly what their stupid name is, but they're like a bunch of dumb, racist, stupid heads. But the Church of Asatru, like in Norway or whatever, is like a super chill ass non-racist church, right? So there's like, just like anything you do or say, some people may take it out of context and assume that you're one of those racists. So make sure that you're explaining yourself. Don't let yourself be painted in that picture. And obviously, if you see some racist using your word, tell them to shut the fuck up because they're being racist.
Yeah. And one thing that you can use in your sort of arsenal as a heathen is that there is absolutely zero, I'm going to say that again, absolutely no historical evidence that supports a position on the ancient Norse excluding people because of their race. In fact, there is more evidence to disprove that ancient heathens were accepting of all ethnicities than there is any saying that they were racist. It was very common.
They're not racist.
For
they're
the
not
ancient
sexist.
Norse to.
They're not. They're none of this shit. Right? That's not what this is. And if the like person that you're learning from is promoting that, again, that's just close practice. We talked about this in the other one. Just go listen to that podcast. But if this person is telling you, some person over here is telling you that like this is some racist shit or this is some whatever shit, as long as you are not a racist piece of shit, ignore that person, right?
And we're not going to go we're not going to go in depth.
We're not getting into. I'm just.
But
it's one of those things that pisses me off as a Odinist.
Can you tell he's getting all like?
I'm getting angry.
He's getting hot.
Fired up.
So just in brief, there is no evidence that there was really racism in the ancient Norse culture. In fact, it was very common for them to take wives of other ethnicities, whether they were wives by choice or wives by force. We're not going to get into that either. But we're
not talking about the history of Vikings.
Women also were able to hold land as well as
sometimes take husbands by force. I'm going to be honest with you. Shield maidens, some of them were terrifying.
There's a lot of interesting information there. So that is that. So we're going to put that sort of aside. Now, heathenry is usually a polytheistic religion as opposed to a monotheistic religion where you're worshiping only one deity. But if you want to do it however you do it, go you. Now, some people also incorporate animism into their practice. Deities are not usually omnipresent or omnipotent.
Is that worshiping anime?
No, that's weeabooism.
That's weeabooism, yeah.
No. Animism is where you essentially give like animals and spirits and even sometimes objects religious significance and perhaps worship them. So deities are not omnipresent. They're not omnipotent. They're more treated like family and role models. And if any of you out there are familiar with Norse mythology, like that makes sense. They don't always do the best thing.
Ooh, no. In fact, I would argue that more often than not, they're not doing the best thing. They're kind of like doing not the right thing, and then that's a lesson for us not to be asshats also.
Yeah. Now there is a lot of belief in non-human spirits, which are most commonly the vatir, and so those are more like spirits of the land and things and places. So spirits of the land would be landvatir, and they may or may not live in harmony with humans.
So the gods are like the Aesir and the Vanir, right? And then the Vatir are sort of like like a rock spirit or like that tree spirit or like what they're like the smaller everyday sort of like interacting with you here on Midgard sort of spirits. You also have Outgarths, which are like not spirits, but also have some significance. You know, they're like There's a bunch, and then of course on top of that, and I'm just jumping ahead of you on here. You have the elves, the dwarves, which are sometimes called dark elves, but that's one of those things where, like, I read this fantastical thing, and I'll have to find it at some point in time to talk about it again. But basically, it's like, are dwarves dwarves, or is dwarves just like the weird word that we chose for these things? Because dark elf literally meant elf that lived underground.
Yeah.
And dwarves live underground, so when, like, everything was kind of getting wrapped up into a single language and way of talking about stuff, they're just like, underground elves are just dwarves, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? As well as you have trolls, which were a thing, and the Jotun, which are giants, which like may or may not just be like some interpretations. Obviously, I mean, like everybody knows like Marvel, and the like giants are just shitheads. But like I'm literally in the middle of reading a book on like ancient Norse mythology where like maybe giants were more important than the Vanir and the Aesir, and it's like a different thing entirely. There's not a lot of like zero source material. Like there's not a lot of like perfect source material on this stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, most of that has to do with the Christianization of Europe drinking game.
Yeah, right. And then just the complete loss of all of our stuff. It's cool.
Because it's coming from a very, very long time ago.
Yeah.
And through the lens mostly of a religion that doesn't believe in this stuff and thinks that
was like, oh, look at these like fun people and they're like crazy beliefs.
Yeah.
You know? Like so, yeah.
Yeah. It is also common to honor and worship ancestral spirits as well. Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily have to be someone that you have direct lineage of, but more like think of this as like a person who means or meant a lot to you. Typically they are already dead when you're worshiping
to you or
them.
the time or the land or the knowledge or whatever the fuck.
Now some worship all, some worship exclusive deities like Odin or Thor or Fenrir. And we have a family tree episode coming in early 2022 where we're going to talk a little bit more about the different people that make up the Norse pantheon.
The Norse family tree is going to make
it's going to make the Greek family tree.
It's going to make it look real
like
simple,
like a
and
beautiful
easy.
pruned shrubbery.
The Greek family tree. Look at this. It looks like a tree. Norse family tree. Fucking nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more to cover. In that.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times before is Midgard, and Midgard is one of the 9 realms. So a central core belief of heathenry is about Yggdrasil, the world tree.
Yeah.
And in it or on it, there exist 9 different realms, and mostly are inhabited by a certain type of thing, right? So Midgard is Earth, essentially, is our plane of existence, if
Yeah.
you will. And that is one of the 9 realms. I don't know all the rest of the 9 realms, so if you want to name any of them, you can.
Oh, like Helheim and Niflheim and Muspelheim and... Oh man, I didn't know I was going to be put on. Honestly, if you gave me a couple of minutes, if we wanted to sit in silence for a couple of minutes, I could probably name all of them off the top of my head. But
no, we have too much to talk about.
We have too much to talk about, and I don't want to have to think that hard, guys. Yeah. So I still have to edit this when we're done talking.
Now, at the foot of Yggdrasil are the 3 Norns. They're kind of like the Fates, and they sit and weave the weird, which is the destiny.
Yeah, it's like
the
tapestry
things.
of fate and destiny.
Yeah.
A lot of Norse stuff has to do with like weaving cloth.
Yeah.
And like brooms and like weaving tools and like bobbins and stuff like that. It's very fascinating.
Yeah. There is also a personal weird or more like luck called Orlog, which is earned or lost and can even be passed down through generations, which is sort of interesting. You think about ancestral curses, and it's something that Odin does also wield in his in certain moments.
Yeah. So the way that I think about the weird and the Orlog is that the weird is sort of like the tapestry of fate as woven by the Norns at the feet of Yggdrasil, and how it it's the outcome of all things, but in the finer details of things, I picture Orlog as karma for the like common English term. Like more than luck, it's like there's like karmic balance to it. You can lose it by doing like shitty shit, and you can gain it by doing like dope honorable shit. And that sort of, it all kind of intermingles and affects and like affects each other.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And when you die, you typically go to Helheim if you are not picked to go to one of these places.
Yeah. Helheim,
and that's
regular death.
Yeah, Helheim,
regular
afterlife.
Death. Right?
So you can be picked to go to Valhalla, which is a hall that is ruled by Odin, and some of the people who have died in combat go here. They're sort of picked to go to Valhalla.
If you die in battle, it's specifically you die in battle. It doesn't have to necessarily be like swords and stuff. Even a battle of words is a battle to die by.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, everybody knows. Everybody knows Valhalla.
Tons of people know Valhalla.
Yeah.
But what you may not know is there are a
roof,
couple of other places too. There's also Folkvangir, which is a meadow that also has a hall. It's ruled by Freya, and if you die in battle and Freya picks you, you get to go there. It's basically Valhalla, but not Valhalla. And
Freya
it has
Valhalla.
like a sweet meadow, basically.
Yeah.
Then there's also Nastrond, which is ruled by Hel and is actually situated in Helheim, which is one of the 9 realms. And it is mainly for those who died and were cheaters, madmen, murderers, and oath breakers.
Yeah. If you're like super dishonorable, you go to a special hall for
where
asshats.
like a dragon serpent chews on your bones for all eternity.
Yeah, it like drips poisons into your body and shit like that. Yeah, it's real fucked up.
Usual stuff.
The usual stuff. Don't break oaths.
Yeah.
Be honorable.
Now,
shit.
certain places also believe in Helgafell, which is a sort of additional area, and it's like a holy mountain, and it has a similar vibe to Valhalla and Folkvangir, but like also, again, not everybody goes there. So there's a couple of places that you can sort of end up. And not all of Helheim is a bad thing. For most people that are probably listening to this podcast, the word hell is associated with bad things, but Helheim is not necessarily associated with bad things.
Yeah, it's not bad, but it's also not good. It's just sort of there.
Mm-hmm.
It's cold. It's generally pretty dark. They don't have like hot nightmare place to go when you die because like they live in the cold, so like being lost in the cold and the dark is a thing.
That sounds way worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Helheim's like a weird nightmare place.
Yeah, so that's a sort of like heathenry snapshot in a nutshell overview. And I'm going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to talk about Odin.
Yeah, we're going to specify up into Odin.
Yeah, so Odin is the god of wisdom, healing, death, knowledge, academia, poetry, inspiration, madness. That's always my favorite when they say madness. Magic, mind altering substances.
So
Shamans, warriors, war, battle, victory, leadership. He's also the god of wine, mead, and brewing. He's a god of transformation, personal sacrifice, and self empowerment. He's also a god of travel and the runes. He's also known to be a shapeshifter too, and is a patron god of travelers. I definitely said that twice. Thanks. And in particular, he also leads the dead to sort of their afterlife, but also kind of not really. It sort of depends on what source it is that you're using and how you feel about him. But Odin is someone who sort of lives in both planes at the same time, so he also favors liminal work. As far as what he looks like, Odin has one eye. He is often seen with a long beard, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, a cloak, carrying a staff or spear, the spear of Odin, which is
Gungnir.
Gungnir, thank you. That never misses, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So basically,
also
Odin,
it's generally gray. He's generally referred to as the Gray Wanderer.
Yeah, so Odin is basically Gandalf. Actually, no, Gandalf is basically Odin.
Yeah. 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 That's, well, those books take a lot.
They from a lot of places, and a
Yeah.
lot of it does come from
Yeah.
a lot of Norse sort of mythology there. So you can definitely see Gandalf, but with one eye. Now, Odin also rides Sleipnir, which is an 8-legged flying gray horse, and is the child of Loki and the stallion Svadilfari. I think I got that one right. He also has...
Sleipnir is the child of Loki and Svadilfari, not Odin, obviously.
Yes, the horse is the child, because Loki turned into a mare. We talked about that in the Loki
Svadilfari
episode,
was just super hot, and Loki was like, what's up? And then turned into a mare. So, bam.
Yeah, Svadilfari, basically Horse the Rock.
Yeah.
Horse Dwayne Johnson.
Horse Dwayne Johnson over here.
Yeah. Odin also has 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, which mean thought and memory. And they bring him information and news of the world, but he's always like perpetually worried that they're not going to return. So he's always my babies.
They leave in the morning to circle to like fly around Midgard, and then they return to him to like whisper what they saw into his ears, sort of a thing.
Yeah.
So that's why you see a lot of depictions of him with 2 ravens.
Yep. And then there's also Gary and Freki, which are his wolves, and Odin gives them the food off the table. And Odin drinks only wine or mead. He really only consumes alcohol.
So some interpretations of Geri and Freki are that it's something like they mean like body and hunger, or body and desire, or something to that extent. And basically the way that I've seen it interpreted in a couple of places, and like my head canon on that, for lack of better words, is that they eat in his stead, and basically exist as like the personification of his mortal needs, like hunger and you know that sort of thing, which is why he like feeds them from the table and stuff like that. They eat so he doesn't have to, kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty
familiar-esque.
Cool. Yeah. Now, Odin is essentially the king of the pantheon of the Norse gods, but his popularity in Norse religions was way, way more than like Zeus in Greece.
Way cooler than Zeus. What's up?
He was much more widely worshipped. In fact, the ravens, the 2 ravens thing, there was a very popular like fashion thing that happened in ancient Norse areas where their particular clothing, they would usually wear buckles to hold it together, kind of like how we wear overalls today. Mm-hmm. But what they would do is they would have 2 medallions made that were ravens, and they would wear one on each shoulder. In fact, some clothes were constructed very specifically so that you could put these raven medallions on there. So that was pretty cool.
I got a bunch of raven stuff. I get it.
Yeah. Now, Odin, as far as family goes, he is the son of Bestia, who is a Jotun, frost giant, if you're following on the Marvel side of things. Yeah. And Bor, who's just a dude. basically. Now, as far as consorts go, mostly you hear about Odin's wife being Frigg, who is the goddess of marriage and prophecy and motherhood. However, he also got with Jord, which is Mother Earth, as well as Grid, to the result of several children.
More kids. Yeah,
more kids.
more
Lots
kids.
of kids. Not as many ladies he got with as old Zeusy boy. So Odin only has a couple of siblings, and that's Vili and Ve. And what's interesting about Vili and Ve is that they have similar domains magically as Odin does. And in fact, it's sort of thought that that Odin and Vili and Ve may be a sort of triple god thing. And we've talked about triple goddess stuff in other episodes, like Imbolc episode and in the Greek mythology episodes, but it's unusual to have a male triple god figure, which is particularly interesting. But it's very similar the way that these three are to the way that Brigid is, and we talk more about her in the Imbolc episode. And I don't know what that number is, because I did not write that down. But if you go back far enough, you'll find it. Now, if you follow certain mythos, or if you really connect with the Marvel side of things, and that's like your true thing, then this would not be the case. Then, like, it would not be the case for you that Loki would sort of low-key be Odin's sibling. He would be more like his son. Because in certain variations of the mythology, Loki is like a dude who hangs around. In some, he is like a blood brother, so not actually physically related, but related through thoughts and deeds. Yeah, and in some of it is he's kind of like his kid, but also kind of like a step kid. So like blood brother, but like Odin's still above. So however you want to believe that, that's totally up to you. Yeah. And then as far as children go, there's a whole bunch, but namely Thor, and we have a Thor deep dive episode there, which is episode 10. He also fathered Baldur and Hod and Valley, as well as like a whole mess of other kids.
Yeah. He has a bunch of kids. Baldur. It was not an I before the R.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. I was like, did that spell wrong on the
No,
notes?
I spelled that right. I may have said it wrong.
It's just Baldur. That's fine. He has a bunch of kids. I want to say that in some interpretations he has more siblings than just those.
There's a ton of sources, so yeah.
But man, I don't
that
remember
could be headcanon. Like,
well, no, I want to say I remember reading a thing about that, but I don't know.
Oh no, when I say headcanon, I don't mean your headcanon. Like, it very well could have been someone else's headcanon that they
500
wrote.
years ago headcanon that they wrote down, and now a bunch of people are believing for no reason.
One of the things that I have learned about Greek mythology is that, like, a lot of writers that write about, like the gods or whatever in Greek mythology, they're mostly writing their own headcanon. Yeah. So
of course.
So there's that. So blóts. We're going to switch back to sort of the general heathenry.
What do you call blóts? What are blóts called in regular?
Sabbats.
Okay. So,
and it's
funny
not regular,
story.
It's just paganism.
Whatever. It's more popular. It's normalized. Most people think of them as sabbats. I literally can never remember the word sabbats. Like, in my mind, they're just called blóts. Mm-hmm. So I am continuously like, oh yeah, we're going to have this blot, blah, 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 blah. And then I have to look at Julia, like, what are those called in regular? Because I don't remember. And she's like, sabbats. Every fucking time, sabbats. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I'm not going to remember that. Because in the Norse mythology, they're called blóts. And that's just a funnier word to say. So I prefer it.
Yeah. So blóts. Deities, spirits, and season of the year are celebrated in blóts. You can also use other rituals for things like rites of passage or oath takings, celebrating a specific deity or any other sort of need. A blót is sort of an all-purpose sort of like ritual word. And the word blót comes from the Old Norse and Old English words for blood sacrifice. However, some of this is kind of like a translation thing and a context thing. So they may have simply meant worship, as opposed to blood sacrifice. Or maybe they also meant blood sacrifice because you sacrificed animals during a blot because you had a bunch of people over and you had to feed them. Yeah. Now, during a blot, you would typically offer food and drink. while making a simbel, which is a ceremonial toast to the gods. And some practitioners also would ritually enter mind-altering states to communicate, gain wisdom, and receive visions from deities and spirits. This was very, very common in Norse side of things.
And that just really sounds like a very complicated, long-winded, and religious way to say we had to kill a chicken so we could have this fucking party, and everybody got super shithouse drunk.
Well, and then that one guy got so high he saw the face of God.
I mean, it just means you haven't been drunk enough. That's what I'm saying, right?
Like
you drink a whole ass box of wine and you come back
party.
to me. Huh?
So now, because there's not a lot of surviving information, we kind of are just sort of working at filling in gaps, kind of like Mad Libs style.
Yeah.
And according to some scholars, an ancient blot would go a little something like this. You invoke the gods and you ask for their aid. You pour mead into a bowl, and then you use an evergreen branch to sprinkle the mead on the statues of the gods, as well as the participants in this ritual.
That's a missed opportunity to use the word sparge, which is German for sprinkle.
Oh, yes. Yeah. To sparge people.
Yeah. I work for a brewery, so we use the word sparge. It's just... it's a thing. Hashtag German knowledge.
Now, next, if you were doing so, you would ritually sacrifice the animal. Yeah. And then you would sprinkle its blood in the same manner as the mead. And it is important to note that in modern times, we're pretty far removed from the living animal that becomes our food and actually our food that we're making. So this isn't something that's like gross or like awful or mean or any of those things.
Yeah. If you own a chicken farm, you got to kill chickens to make chicken nuggets. I mean,
like,
and, it's cool if you don't want to know how the sausage is made, but like, don't chagrin people who know how it's made.
And it is either outright said or hinted at in many ancient texts, and definitely said outright in a lot of more modern texts, that you should kill the animal in the most humane and quickest way possible. Yeah. So it's not about torture. It's about doing that thing.
Get the job
and
done.
Part of the reason why is, like I sort of said, like feeding the people that are there, because you got a bunch of people there for a party and you got to feed them something, right? But also that the blood is kind of like a higher level of offering, if you will. It goes a little further than, say, like wine or mead would, but also some people believed that as the animal died, it would carry with it the wishes and intents of the people who were participating in that blot or that ritual. Yeah.
So one of these days I'll make a little graphic for this, but like logic aside, right? Obviously you have to sacrifice an animal. You have a bunch of people over. You need to feed them. Sacrifice an animal for that, right? Now, when it comes to something like, let's say, butchering a pig or culling a pig or a chicken or something like that, right? Generally, that is like a 1 or 2 person job, which means if you have 25 people over and they're all trying to participate in this quote unquote ritual sacrifice, what with because they're all hungry and we're having a big ass party, all right, to allow them to participate, what would make the most amount of sense? I would have a bunch of untrained hands in here trying to help you, which would be annoying, let me tell you what, right? Or would it make way more sense to kind of build a ritual where everybody gets to like sort of blood participate in it, right? Yeah. You know, it's I mean, in my mind, it's kind of like, you know, like when you're doing like Palm Sunday and they get you with the holy water, or like Ash Wednesday, or like any of those like sort of group ritual practices, you kind of have to like uniform shit up because you're trying to distribute it to a bunch of people, right? So like from my perspective, from like a non-religious logical perspective, in my opinion, it makes sense to do some sort of a blood ritual. Yeah. The blood's not really gonna do anything anyway, right? I mean, unless you're gonna make like blood pudding or something like that out of it. Yeah. Even that you only need so much, right? So it's like you already have these things in place. This is how you get people involved. So like, but also, you know, like non-logic hat off, like religious practice hat on. Like it sort of makes sense when you think about it to like get everybody involved in the invocation of that sacrifice.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Now, if you were not going to be ritually sacrificing an animal and you kind of want to reconstruct this method, just sort of present, you know, like have your food on like a plate covered with something. Yeah. And then uncover that food and just sort of like present the food. Doesn't mean you can't eat it. Just present it. And then you can consume it later.
Technically, if everybody brought some food in, that would also kind of count.
Absolutely.
Right? Especially if there's like spirits of like the grains and spirits of the plants that are involved in their things. If everybody brings a food buffet style, then everybody's participating in the necessary sacrifice of time and effort and will that goes into producing that food, as well as the necessary death of that material, whether it's harvested from the ground or like hamburgers bought at the Safeway or whatever, right? Because that was a thing that was alive that had to be non-alive for you to be able to consume it.
Yeah.
So there are like let's not worry about the fine details of it, and let's kind of think in broad strokes about how you can take something like spraying everybody with blood from a tree branch to like a less messy way to do it, because that's messy. I don't want to have to clean that shit up, bro. I don't want those people in my house get everything all bloody and whatnot.
Mess. I also don't want blood all over the outside out there.
We have wild animals, and I don't need that shit.
Yeah. So after you have presented or sacrificed your animal and sprinkled its blood around, or you have not done that, you can do any additional ritual work necessary, read poetry, honoring gods to sort of like grease those wheels there. And then when you're done, you would pour the remaining mead in the bowl. Hey, remember that mead we had in the bowl?
Yeah.
And onto the ground or into the fire as a final offering to the gods. Keep in mind, if you pour that mead in the fire, it's probably going to hamper the ability of having the fire be fire.
Yeah. And be fucking fire safe, mother of God.
Drink a game.
If you are playing with alcohol, be double fire safe. As well as alcohol burns. So when you pour it in fire, you risk it burning more. Don't do that.
Yep.
Don't be stupid.
Yeah. So be safe as always. We don't want anything to happen to y'all. So after this, a meal is prepared, typically using the animal sacrifice or whatever it is that you're going to be presenting, and then a simbel happens. Now, just a word about the offering, specifically if you're not doing the animal sacrifice route, which I feel like most people that are listening to this probably won't be doing that. But if you have food that you've already prepared that you have given and you're sort of concerned about eating an offering like that, first of all, it's okay. Yeah. It's not like, so the spirits, the deities, the gods, they're not coming down and literally intent, eating that food. It's about intent. It's also about the essence of the food.
Yeah.
But also, I want to remind you that when the ancient Egyptians, and I know we're not talking about them here, but when the ancient Egyptians had festivals and rituals and things like that, they had food in piles for people to consume. They would wait they would wait until a certain point after a ritual to be able to eat, to allow the spirits to eat the soul of the food, the ka, if you will. And then after they had consumed that, or they had given them ample time to consume that, then they were totally fine to go ahead and eat it. Yeah. And you can pretty much use that practice for any
If you don't live in
a
place where you can like leave a dish out with food, ants, animals, children, any of that, then you can always like moment of silence that food, so that way the gods get their turn or whatever, right? And then eat that food,
and the gods will not be upset
or
at you
set
that.
an extra plate. Hey, everybody, like get a nice plate. Like, you want a good reason to go shopping at a Goodwill or something like that. Whatever the I imagine Goodwill's only in California, but
store.
Some sort of, thank you. Go to a thrift store, get a fancy plate, right? That's your offering plate. And then when you're having a blot, everybody get your food, whatever. Put a little piece of food on the blot plate, like on the offering plate.
Yeah.
Everybody puts a little bit on that offering plate. End of the night, sweep that shit in the trash, wash that plate.
Yep.
Up nice. There you go. Look, now you're not leaving nothing out. You're not risking nothing. Nobody's getting sick. You don't got to worry about none of that stuff. Again, it's about the intention of the act.
Yeah.
It's not about the specificity of the act.
Yeah. Yeah. So next is the simbel. The simbel, when this happens, it's basically sort of like a mini dinner ritual almost. So during a simbel, a drinking horn or a bowl, depending on what your thing is filled with mead and then is passed around. So as people pass it around, they take a drink for it, or they pour it into their own drinking vessel, because we live in the now times.
Yeah.
And then they drink out of their own, they drink the mead, and then they make toasts and then verbal tributes to the gods and heroes or ancestors. And they also can make oaths and boasts. So it's like a precocious dining party.
It's a big ass party.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is a blot. Now that we know what a blot is, we can talk about which blots there are throughout the year. And boy, if you thought that 8 Sabbats was a lot, prepare yourselves. because
Party
there's
harder.
12 main
What's up?
blóts.
Yeah.
Most of these coincide with other pagan
Every day's
Sabbats.
a blot if you try it hard enough. That's what I'm saying about that.
That's true. Yeah. So most of these coincide with or have similar meaning to the other pagan Sabbats, which we've already covered in the podcast. And those podcast episodes also have a ton of heathen and pagan info. So we're not going to go too deep into what these blóts mean. But I am going to tell you what podcast episode they go with if they go with a podcast episode. So we're going to start with the next blot that basically would be scheduled coming up. So that would be Modra Night, which is Mother's Night. And this is typically the night before the winter solstice. And the next time that happens is on 12. That's funny. I put next year's year. It is going to be on 12/20/2022. Woof, that's a lot of twos.
Oh, it's 12/20/2021, but that's fine.
Oh yeah, 12/20/2021. That's a lot.
Didn't even listen to her own thing.
I didn't. I just saw all those twos and was like,
yeah. You could also just say December 20th.
Yeah, December 20th is Modronit, which is a celebration of ancestral mothers, goddesses, and other female family members or people in your life. Mm-hmm. Now, starting on the winter solstice, which is December 21st this year, is Yule, which is essentially their winter festival. And Yule lasts 12 days, and it's basically like New Year. And it really serves to honor Odin's role as the one who leads the dead to the afterlife. You know, it's kind of the dead of winter. If you live in a cold place, probably the time most people are going to be kicking that bucket. Yeah. And we do have a Yule episode. That is episode number 2. So that's a pretty early one. Think it back. Man, come a long way. In only a year, a little bit less. So next is Easter, which is on the spring equinox. The next time that happens is going to be on March 20th. And that is similar to Ostara, which we have an episode for. And during this festival, offerings are made to Easter, who is a German goddess of spring and renewal. After that is Sigurblot, or Day of Victory, which is the first day of Icelandic summer according to the ancient Icelandic calendar. And that happens in mid-April. And the next time that happens, it will be on April 21st. But it's not always April 21st, and I don't know how they calculate that calendar yet. So soon. April 21st, 2022. And this is technically a summer festival, which for those of you living in the Northern Hemisphere, that might seem weird because April doesn't feel very summery. But really what it's signifying is the victory over winter, because the ancient Norse really thought about the weather in 2 seasons, winter and summer.
Yeah. Warm and cold.
Yeah, warm and cold, which when you think about it, kind of makes sense. Yeah. So it's also to gain victory in summer battles because it's cold during the winter, and in the winter is already trying to kill you. You're not really fighting battles during the winter unless you can, avoid it. And sacrifices are also made to Odin on this day, along with its, battle connotations there. This one does not have a date that really coincides with a pagan Sabbat, so this one's kind of its own thing. But the next one does. So Blostomfjols, or Walpurgisnacht, is in early May, and the next time that one happens will be May 1st. And that really is very much like Beltane, which we have an episode for, which is a flower and spring and sort of fertility festival.
Yeah, Blostomfjols or Walpurgisnacht.
Thank you.
Yeah, like Nacht just means night.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's Walpurgis night.
Yeah.
Basically. So after that, we have Midsummer, which is summer solstice.
Which is the summer solstice.
And this is a solar festival. We have a midsummer episode as well. Yeah. And the next time that happens will be June 21st.
You gotta say it German sound. Midsommar.
Midsommar.
Like
the movie.
Sweet horror movie. Man, that is a good movie.
So good.
Yeah. A24. Kicking ass. Totally no association. Go watch that if you haven't seen it. It's not for kids.
It's not for some adults either.
Yeah, it's like a rated R horror movie. It's pretty dark. But Midsommar, fucking great. Mm-hmm. Great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next after that is Frisblot, which is similar to Lunasa, which is in early August. And the next time that happens will be on August 1st. We have an episode about that. It is a harvest festival.
Yeah.
And then after that, we have Winterfjelled, which is winter full moon. And remember, the Norse looked at things in 2 seasons. So for us, that is fall. And usually happens on the first full moon after the autumn equinox, which is October 9th, 2022. And this includes Haustblot, which is a another harvest festival similar to Mabon. So
literally just means harvest festival.
Yeah. So the time of winter full moon is a longer festival that kind of like takes place over a not concrete number of days. So if you celebrate that for one day,
big parties, multiple
great.
days.
If you celebrate that for 3 days, great. If you celebrate that for 14 days, great. If you celebrate it for an entire month of October and then change, that's also great. So that's the beauty of that one. Next, we have Veternatir, which is Samhain in late October. So like just past now. Technically, you could probably still celebrate this now, as we are in November, if you're listening to this when this episode comes out, because it kind of like it's another one of those festivals which lasts for a while, and that while is kind of however long you feel like. And this is sort of like another longer thing, and it includes a festival called Diseblot, which honors Valkyries and the Disir, and is about asking for like a full harvest. And sometimes Diseblot is celebrated in February around the same time as Imbolc, which is on February 1st. We do have an episode for Imbolc that has cool information that would be seasonal that may be able to sort of fit with this. And then lastly, the 12th blot is part of Vetratir, and that is Elfblot, which honors the elves and the Landvatir as well as the dead, and is very, very similar to what we do as like sort of modern Samhain traditions. And we do, of course, have an episode for that as well.
Yeah. I normally celebrate Diseblot in the spring, in February. Sort of like thankful for the harvest that's kept us through winter.
Yeah.
Sort of a thing. And then Alphablat during Samhain, as opposed to stacking them into the Vetnatir thing. Right?
Yeah.
So, and again, you're going to find, they're all over the place. You're going to find a bunch of weird stuff about these. So.
Yeah,
you're going to be good.
So we're going to switch a little bit to specifically honoring Odin, because now we know what heathenry is and who Odin is and what blóts are like. And now you can sort of piece together the ways how you, if you were so interested or inclined to, can celebrate and honor Odin himself. So there's a bunch of ways that you can honor Odin, and I kind of have this as like a list, so we're just going to go through it like that, because basically this podcast is a lot of me reading lists of things. Yay. So sacrifices, I know we talked earlier about animal sacrifices, but Odin is also really big on self-sacrifice. He sacrificed his eye, as well as he sacrificed eating for several days to obtain the powers and knowledge of the runes. So self-sacrifice is also an option there. As far as offerings goes, anything from the correspondence list, which we'll get to in a little bit, or whatever you like, would be something that Odin would probably enjoy. Again, an offering is more of an intent than it is an actual physical thing. Giving Odin a space inside of your space, whether you have an altar or not, giving him, having like a small picture or a statue or something like that, representing him, essentially gives him a doorway to this plane through your sacred space. Odin has a pretty good ego too, so seeing his own likeness in your area is definitely going to be a flattery item that he would probably enjoy.
Yeah.
And fasting. So, as I mentioned before, Odin fasted for 9 days and 9 nights on Yggdrasil to gain the runes. So fasting is an option. However,
he fasted for 9 days and 9 nights until he died, but that's neither here nor there.
So, however, we are not condoning this. If you choose to fast, check with a health professional.
Yeah, don't just jump willy-nilly into fasting.
Don't just decide to stop eating.
Yeah.
And certainly don't plan on doing that for 9 days.
But you could also, theoretically, if you went to bed at midnight and you stopped eating then, and then you didn't have breakfast until like 9:15 in the morning. You just fasted for 9 hours, right? Yeah, that's not 9 days, but that's still the number 9. Bam, numerology.
Yeah.
So again, it's a function of intent. If you are not in a health place to fast for 9 whole ass days, I don't think that he's gonna be like, boo. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, now, you instead of fasting, you could also go without something, similar to the way that some Christians do Lent. You could, go without.
Just like abstain from
something.
Abstain from vegetables for 9 days.
No way.
Yeah, fuck those.
That's.
Yeah. I want meat and beer. That's all I want.
I want the vegetables. I'm already thinking like I need another box of lettuce.
Gross. Yeah, fucking gross. Next,
yeah.
Go.
You can also honor Odin's animal companions. So having images of his animal companions, like jewelry, like those raven shoulder buckles, which the more I think about it, the more I want to like have that.
Yeah. I have like a bunch of raven stuff. I have like actually a raven up there, not like a live animal raven, but like Halloween styrofoam statue raven.
That's right.
And I've got like a bunch of little raven like vessels and feathers
and trinkets and stuff. Yeah.
I've got like necklaces with ravens on it. I obviously have head tattoos with ravens on them.
You have a whole shirt that I embroidered.
Yeah, I have a whole shirt with ravens embroidered on it. I got a lot of raven stuff. I like ravens. So yeah.
So honoring his animal companions, not just ravens necessarily.
Yeah, ravens, wolves.
When you honor him, consider leaving some food as offering for his companions, his wolves, his birds, his horse. So that's a way that you can do that. You can also celebrate his holy festivals, which we just talked about in the blot, but basically are Blot and Yule. However, like you can celebrate him whenever you want. Also, Alpha Blot would be pretty good for Odin because of its connotations with the dead. You can also go hunting or eat food that was hunted or display animal bits that were hunted. Again, always ethically and sustainably. But Odin was famous in the Middle Ages for being the leader of what was called the wild hunt, which is really cool. That is a whole entire podcast episode by itself.
Just the wild hunt. Yeah.
Just the wild hunt. It's super fascinating. So hunting is another thing that he is associated with. And the wild hunt typically ends just before Yule begins. So now would be a good time to do something like that. I think it's also pretty popular for hunting certain types of animals. And you can also confidently honor your oaths and promises. Odin does not take kindly to oath breakers.
Yeah, don't be an oath breaker.
So if you make an oath and have Odin as a patron, or if he is, you're calling upon him to help you honor an oath, honor that oath. That doesn't mean that if you don't, he's gonna do something mean to you. But like, Odin's probably not gonna want to work with you if you break an oath. Like, that doesn't mean that he's mad at you or that he's gonna like curse you or something silly like that. Yeah. But he definitely isn't gonna want to be around, or he's gonna give you a lower priority.
Yeah. And again, right, everything's situational. So like, if you were put in a if you were put in a place where like keeping a promise is like, let's say, physically impossible, right? Oh, I'm definitely going to be there tomorrow to do this thing. And you like slip and fall and break your leg so you can't go into work tomorrow to do that thing. Are you an oath breaker, or did you slip and fall and break your leg so you're incapable of doing that and you're going to try and take care of it as soon as you get back, and or call somebody else to take care of it? You see how that's not being an oath breaker so much as you broke your fucking leg?
Yeah.
So again, it's the idea of being an oath breaker that he is against, which is like liars, cheats, thieves, people who make promises and don't keep them, cheaters, like especially like marriage is an important thing in the Norse religion, so like don't be a fucking cheater, shit like that. So it's that sort of a like no oath breakers.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're thinking, but Odin had other consorts, those were mythologically, technically before Frigg.
Yeah. And or Frigg allowed it.
Or maybe she was okay with it too.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
you can also, to honor him,
ancient polyamory.
read or write. You can also learn something, especially magical stuff. You could try reading the Eddas or books on Norse mythology. You know, any sort of that like ancient organic text.
A bunch of books back there on Norse mythology. I'm reading one right now on the giants, the Jotun. But I do have one. I have the left-handed side of Odinism, which is like a look at like the darker side of Odinism and stuff like that. Odin was very big. He was obviously he's the god of wisdom, but like very big on like knowledge and things like that. One of those things is like learning more about practice and ritual and things like that. I don't this wasn't really brought up because this isn't a deep dive into Odin. This is really about the practice of Odinism, but technically the like practice of witchcraft in Norse mythology was generally associated with women and not men, and it was like almost it wasn't dishonorable, but it was sort of like mocked at for practice, like if a male practiced witchcraft. But at the same time, that's probably not super true, since Odin, the Allfather, practiced that witchcraft.
Yeah. Also,
right.
There are terms that mean essentially priest or shaman.
Yeah.
Well, I should say there are terms for priests and shamans in the ancient Norse because they're separate things, and they have both masculine and feminine versions. So I think that probably was not
later when like people started thinking of like weird gender norms and shit like that, and maybe not like a very old ancient thing. I have seen stuff in the past about Odin and how like because he like there's a lot of cross-dressing in the Eddas about like Thor dressing up like a lady or Loki becoming a lady horse, you know, Odin practicing like lady magic, things like that. So they're very like just remember that the Norse stuff isn't like gender biased. It isn't racially biased. It isn't like classist and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like it's very open to everybody, and everybody does it their own way, and everybody comes together to celebrate together, and it's fine that it's a little different or whatever. And like really the secret time is that you're not being an asshole.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Now, you can also sing songs or read out loud. Odin enjoyed stories and spoken words, so that's something that you can do as well. And you can also burn incense if it is acceptable for you to do so. Also, please be fire safe in drinking game. And as far as incense goes, pretty much anything. However, he especially would enjoy the 9 sacred herbs, which we'll talk about when we get to the correspondence list, or really anything else from that correspondence list.
Yeah.
Whew. Boy, that is most of this chunky boy out of the way.
Yeah. All right. So before we move on to spells and correspondences and such like that, I want to give a quick shout out to our patrons, which is Alan, Miranda, Helena, Mackenzie, and Alexa.
Yep. Thank you for helping us do what we do.
Y'all are gangster. Thank you. And speaking of patrons, we have a Patreon. It's Nerd Jive. Nerd Jive is our Patreon. And we have a Horn and Cauldron podcast tier expressly for this podcast, where you get access to the Book of Shadows pages, which has a brief of the things that we talked about in this podcast on one side, and then on the other side is correspondences and spells. I make those. We're like 4 behind, but that's because they are a lot of work to do. I sometimes make cell phone wallpapers.
Yep.
So if you're into changing your cell phone wallpaper super frequently, which is a thing that I do because I'm crazy, you can change your cell phone wallpapers whenever I do a new one. Yeah, and we have a higher tier. We call them stakeholders because of all the stakes.
Lots of stakes.
Lots of stakes. Those are old YouTube references. If you have been following us on YouTube for a while or watch our reviews, you know about stakes and how high they are. They're on the ceiling. They're so high.
Yeah.
But our stakeholders also get access to our once a monthly hangout. It's at the beginning of the month.
Yep.
We call the barbecue. Even though every time we've had it, we're eating fast food because I'm rushing home after work to get everything set up. because I am fucking horrible at every single time we have these. I'm like, I'm gonna get off of work on time. And then like after work, somebody's like, hey man, you want to have a beer? And I'm just like, yeah, I've got time because I'm an idiot.
And then he calls me. He's like, I'm on my
I'm just like, I'm running 15 minutes late. I'm
late
going.
night, huh?
Whatever. It's not important. You still get to hang out with us and we chit chat and have a good old time.
For usually a couple hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna promise that they're forever gonna last that long, but they might. Honestly, we have so much fun hanging out that like who cares, you know?
Yeah, and we also have a Discord channel.
Oh yeah, and if you're on any of the tiers, you get access to some sort of a Discord channel. I don't remember how those are set up, but whatever. If you're on the Horn and Cauldron podcast here, we have a Discord where we can chit chat, hang out. You can ask questions, and sometimes we're just like sharing fun stuff that we've been crafting on.
Yeah.
Or just like chit chatting about like whatever like nonsense is happening on the internet right now. So it's a real cool, chill hangout space.
Although it's mostly about magical stuff.
It's mostly about magical stuff. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that it's not, but it's often about like, oh, I saw this thing on TikTok.
Yeah.
On like Witch Talk. Let's talk about this. Or something to that extent. So yeah, check out our Patreon and do all that kind of stuff. Let's get into spells.
That's right.
Yeah.
So these spells, they were written by us, and they have no connection to historical or traditional practices. So just keep that in mind. Yeah. So the first one is an invocation.
In fact, I wrote them.
And you're gonna read them
recently. I wrote them.
Yeah. So the first one is an invocation for Odin.
Yeah. So this is an invocation for Odin. Man, I have like a bajillion different ways to invoke Odin. I don't know what the singular for invocation is.
It's invocation.
I'm gonna go with invocate or invoke. To invoke the Odin. But so this is the one that I think this is kind of like, in my opinion, the most best one that I've written thus far. So Odin, Allfather, Lord of the Aesir, I call upon you. Odin the Spear Shaker, wielder of Gungnir, protect me in battle. Odin the One-Eyed, Lord of Wisdom, teach me to read the runes and staves. Odin the Wanderer, Raven Lord of Midgard, waken my words and quicken my magics. And then you provide like an offering, or you do your ritual, or you like meditate, or do whatever you desire to do.
Or nothing.
Nothing. Or just like say that and then go to the next part.
Yeah.
And then at the end, Odin, Ancient One, Allfather, by your sacrifice, I thank you. And of course, any I's can become we's if it's with a group. Odin and all of the Norse gods generally like you throwing a bunch of titles into stuff. So
most deities
do, right? They're like royalty. They like knowing that you know that they did like a bunch of fancy shit.
Yeah.
So
yeah. They're like being reminded of past.
Yeah. They're like, look at all these deeds that I did, and you're like, yeah. Let me read a fucking list.
Yeah.
Also, that is a very small cross section of a very large fucking list for Odin.
Yeah. So... In fact, there's a few sources that state that he has the most number of epithets out of any ancient heathen or pagan god.
That's believable. Yeah.
Even more
he's involved in a bunch of shit.
Than some of the most prolific ones. Like the most prolific one that we've seen thus far in our research with this podcast has been Isis, and Odin has more epithets than Isis. On the record, he has 177 epithets, which are titles, essentially.
I didn't know that. I don't know a quarter of them. Yeah. But yeah, gangster. Okay, and then the second one is honoring Odin's sacrifice. So this is a rune spell, but it's sort of to learn and practice runes, and it's sort of to honor his sacrifice. And so I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to go into some explanation on this one. All right, so you're going to need like a writing instrument and something to write on. So like a thing to write with, a thing to write on, pen and paper, pencil and paper, whatever. A rock and a slightly softer rock, whatever you want to do.
Preferably paper, though.
Yeah, definitely. This is going to be one of those preferably biodegradable stuff. Don't write on plastic. Don't be crazy. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to get all your stuff together. You're going to write each rune on the paper. It doesn't need to be in any particular order. It doesn't need to be in like a shape. If you want to put it in a shape, do it in a shape. If you want to do it in an order, do it in an order. right? But you're going to write each one down and you're going to say its name out loud, right? So you're going to write answers and say answers. You're going to write Birkano, you're going to say Birkano, right? You're going to write Othala, you're going to say Othala, whatever, right? So you're going to write them and say them out. Then you're going to take that paper, you're going to fold it up, you're going to put it under a rock underneath a tree, or like bury it under a tree or next to a tree. You want it underneath some sort of tree-like stuff, right? And then you're going to say aloud after you put it underneath this tree-like stuff, 9 realms are known, 18 songs were sung. 1 tree connects them all. For 9 days and nights Odin hung to learn the rune staves, great and small. He learned to carve them, read them, stain them. He taught them in our halls. Nor bread nor mead he died on that tree, to lift them and to fall. And then you're just going to, like, leave. And the reason why, so this is it. This is to learn the runes and honor Odin's sacrifice. So for me, learning runes is primarily a function of constant active use. Like, I can name most of the runes. Sometimes I get their names backwards because I'm like a little dyslexic, honestly. But sometimes I get their names backwards. But I know all of them, and for the most part, which like equivalent English letter they represent. In fact, the way that I got as good as I am at runes, and I was actually better in the past when I was doing this more often, when I used to work on the floor in the brewery, I wrote all of my shift notes in runes, and then at the end of the day, translated them back into English for my like official reports, and then I carried like a flip book in, you know, with like all my daily tasks to write down and to take notes when people give me instructions and stuff like that. And I wrote all of that in runes. Like literally everything. I have like notebooks full of like runes. They're written in English. It's obviously not written in like Icelandic or Norwegian or like another language or anything like that. But I just write it in runes. I'm covered in tattoos that are runes. This hand, wrong hand. The camera is backwards and I'm looking at it and it's making my mind shatter. It's fine, whatever. I literally this has been the exact same tiny picture of runes, and even though like we made our own, I still don't use it. For a graphic, I use the like one that I've always used on my phone.
Yeah.
That's honestly, it's just because I haven't moved that graphic to my cell phone. I keep forgetting. But yeah, so again, it's that idea that like you want to honor Odin and honor the sacrifice to learn from these things, but at the same time, you want to make that practice and then like kind of give that practice up in sacrifice by like writing it down and then offering it to the sacrifice that Odin made. Both of these obviously have no direct correlation to anything like historically relevant, but for me, they're both sort of like there's the practicality of practice as well as the like religious part of like doing ritual. The practicality in the first is like learning his titles and like his things, right? Sleipnir and Gungnir and all that kind of stuff, right? Because you want to learn all these things, right? There's like, what's the name of the squirrel? What's the name of his horse? What's the name of the horn that bloody what's his name blows to signal the beginning of Ragnarok? You know.
Oh, I have no idea.
Whatever I'm talking about there.
That stuff. I know what you're talking about, but I don't know any of that.
It's
stuff.
Gjallarhorn is the name of the horn, by the way.
And just to be clear,
also,
you don't.
I might be pronouncing all of this shit wrong. So let's just start with that.
You don't have to know all of these things.
No, it's just a practice thing.
Practice and to worship.
No. Trust me.
You do you.
I am forgetful enough for all of us. So that's one of the reasons why I practice this stuff in the manner in which I do. Is because I am forgetful and I will forget and then it's gone forever. That's just how that works. That's just what my brain does. It's just like, nah, you need to know more about Star Trek. We're gonna give up basic human shit. Welcome to my mind. Yeah, when you want to rebuild a warp core, you just forgot your wife's name in the middle of a fucking YouTube video.
Yeah. A thing.
that happens more often than I care to admit. Oh my God. Yeah.
It's hilarious. So
on the correspondences.
Correspondences, aka another of me reading lists. So these are correspondences specifically for Odin. So animals associated with Odin are bears, horses, wolves, and ravens. Surprise, right?
Yeah.
As far as colors go, gray, black, dark blue, red, because blood, and also wine. For rocks, agate, amber, carnelian, onyx, and tin are associated with Odin. And remember I was saying the 9 herbs of Odin? Guess what? They're here in plants. Haha! There are more plants that are associated with him than just these, but these are the ones that I particularly am going to focus on because they are being held as sacred to him. So that is betony, chamomile, crab apple. Yes, crab apple, but regular apples will do. Fennel, horehound, mugwort, nettle, parsley, and plantain were all very sacred to Odin. You can also, use evergreens or woad or juniper, any sort of evergreen, really. He's pretty into also. As far as food goes, mostly it's booze. And the nicer the quality, the better. Odin really likes booze.
Good single malt.
Yeah.
That's primarily what I use is like quality single malt scotches.
Yeah.
Mead is so sweet. Sometimes I can't drink it.
Yeah. Now, his, like we talked about earlier, honoring his animal companions. Any food that his animal companions would also enjoy eating are basically something that you would use to honor Odin as well. So you could give him like a snifter of a good single malt and a handful of sunflower seeds. You do you.
Yeah.
Miscellaneous things that Odin likes are like empty alcohol bottles. He's also associated with the Hanged Man tarot card and the number 9 and any rune. He also likes tobacco and other smokable items.
Yeah. It's funny that he's into empty alcohol bottles because those are fucking everywhere. I'm always like, look how pretty this bottle is. I'll save it for a project. And that project is fucking sitting somewhere. That project is, what if I just left it out there? Just sitting.
It's me cleaning it out and being like, should we keep this bottle? And he's like, yes, this empty alcohol bottle, so 100% pretty.
Of the time,
Doesn't matter that we have like 4 more of them. I really like this one. And I'm like, okay.
What if we do something with it and then we forget?
Yeah.
I forget. It's mostly me. Yeah.
Yeah. Witches have sticks and jars. You have empty alcohol bottles.
Yeah. That's fair.
And that's it for the correspondences. And for this podcast episode on modern Odinism.
Yeah, so the practice of modern Odinism is sort of an interesting and fun thing, right? I've been practicing Odinist for a while now, and it's a lot of learning and research and sort of like adapting to new knowledge and like exploring things like that. There are like group practices in the forms of things like the Church of Asatru, although that's a bit more all of the pantheon-y. And like online groups and things like that. For me, I have friends that worship the Norse gods, but not really any like direct singular Odinists that I kind of hang out with and stuff. But modern to me, right, to finish this podcast off, to me, modern Odinism is a study and practice in sort of like a great combination of so many things, of historical reconstructionism, of research, of adaptability, but really it comes down to sort of what I would consider some of the basic tenets of Odinism, right? Which is that like don't break oaths, be honorable, stand up for those who need to be stood up for, like do the right thing, be a good person, seek out wisdom, don't fear death but embrace it, seek out knowledge, all of the things that Odin is the god of. Find a way to enlighten those into something of more power. And I read a lot about this, and I do a lot of studying, and I write all of my own ritual, right? I mean, obviously it's based on other people's works, and it's inspired by this person, or it's informed by this historical text and or rock what with words carved into, you know, or something to that extent. But in the grand scheme of things, it really is sort of your own thing, right? And it's a function of finding people who you can talk to about it and like adapt and learn together and discover together and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to say if you have questions, honestly, vague questions are fine too. But if you have like specific questions, just be like, what is Odinism? We're like, podcast. What are you fucking commenting that on? But no, if you have questions, like reach out. Obviously, in the comments below the YouTube video is the best space. So that way everybody can be informed and ask and talk. But I understand that sometimes people don't like asking questions in public forums.
And
for,
if that's
for a
your
great many
preference,
reasons, and just DM us, man.
Yeah.
I'm on social media. I'm on Nerd Jive at fucking everything. DM me there. You're at Goddess Jules, bloody everything. You can message her there.
And you can find links to all of our social, as well as the YouTube channel and other podcast outlets to listen to us on our website, which is nerdjive.com.
Yeah.
And I believe there's an email function on there too.
There is an email form on nerdjive.com. You can just use that email form. It goes to my email address probably.
It does.
Yeah, it does. It's honestly like it's mostly spam that we get. So, because most people just DM us or, you know, join our Patreon and hit us up on Discord and we can chit chat there. And then you can ask
us as many things as much as you'd like.
And that's what we're here for, right? Is to answer questions and talk about it. Again, we're not experts. We're just people with access to the internet and research. And we're going to pretend enough time to do the things that we're doing because it's not enough time. But yeah, we're just interested and passionate about that stuff. And so that's what we do.
If you like what we're doing, definitely consider supporting us on Patreon because that does help us to do what we do and it helps us to do what we do better every time. So,
upgrade lights, audio, video. There've been an innumerable number of changes thanks to our patrons helping us out with regard to this kind of a stuff. But and obviously if you're listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, or you just want to support us on YouTube, you can go over there. You can subscribe to this channel. You can like this video, comment below, any comment, just say hi. You can say hi back, be friends forever, and all that stuff. But so what do we have coming up next?
So our next episode is going to be hidden heathenry in modern holidays.
Yeah, okay.
So that one's going to be a fun kind of like giant listicle episode with a bunch of random bits. We're definitely going to talk about some of the holidays that we already kind of talk about with the Sabbats and whatnot, but I'm going to try to throw in some additional bonus holidays too, that we've got some interesting knowledge. And after that, in approximately 4 weeks, it is our 1-year anniversary of this podcast.
Yeah, it's our podcast anniversary. So
that's right.
Our podcast anniversary, we are going to host a live stream. We're going to do this on Sunday, even though these normally come out on like Monday or whatever. One, so that way after the live stream, it can come out. Because I'm going to have to like edit it and whatever. Figure out how to do all of this stuff because I am like wicked good at computers, but this young person shit is so confusing, man. Let me tell you what. You want a fucking database? I will build you a database from scratch. You want to take 8 million lines of code, make that shit work? I can do that.
We're going to be doing the live stream on Sunday, 12/5. And
December 5th, 12/5.
Okay, that's what it says on the thing. At 4 p.m. Pacific. Yeah. So we're going to be answering questions on this live stream. So think of your questions, hit us up and DM us or message us and let us know what your question is if you can think of it ahead of time. That way we can definitely answer it. You can also answer it in the chat on the thing. This will be live streamed on our YouTube channel. It's Nerd Jive on YouTube. So that's where you're going to attend that. I can figure out how to do that better. Man, because I don't really 100% know, but it's cool. Don't worry about it. So we're going to be live streaming. That's also probably going to be a long boy. We'll probably live stream for a couple hours. Yep. So be prepared for that. That's going to be fun. Yeah. Yeah. And then the last thing that we have upcoming is we also have an Etsy shop that has a variety of tie-dye and sort of witchy and heathen items, including some Horn and Horn and Cauldron podcast swag. Tried to combine the word cauldron and the word podcast.
Yeah.
That did not work out well.
Yeah, we got some podcast merch up there.
We're going to be having an
tie-dye.
Etsy shop sale for the holidays there. And that's going to be starting on the 17th of November and then going through the 3rd of December. So we're going to be giving like 20% off everything in our shop.
Yep, 20% off everything in the shop. So check that out. We've got some heck, we even have some art on there. We've got some of my...
Yeah, we got art. We got
whole
tie-dye.
painting, cosmic style art. We've got tie-dye.
I've got some of my art.
She's got some of her art. Yeah, she does like Bob Ross style painting, which is super badass.
And also like paintings that are based off of tarot cards. So
Yep.
there's like a Persephone one and like a tower one with like a nuclear explosion. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty dope.
And we also have embroidery floss and yarn. So if you're looking at getting into some sort of craft this holiday
or something like that, yeah. And the shop is always expanding with like new stuff, and we're always uploading new stuff. We do a lot of tie-dye work.
Coming up, we'll be having god and goddess like statues that are basically Barbie doll size.
They're like upcycled Barbies
Yeah.
and like G.I. Joe dolls and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Because we enjoy that like upcycled life.
Yeah, and also spell jars.
Yes, as well as spell jar kits. Yeah, for like DIY spell jars and stuff like that. So stay tuned for all that stuff. But yeah, check out our Etsy shop. It's Norgrove Enterprises on Etsy.
And you can also
link
get that
in the
with the
thing.
link in our website.
Link in the stuff. But so yeah, either way, thank you for watching. Do all the things that we asked you to do, or whatever.
Thank you
that
for
shit
sticking
is.
through this super long, I'm sure, episode.
Yep.
But definitely chock full of stuff. So I hope that you all got something good out of it. And to the patron who requested this, there you go. I hope
hopefully that answered some questions. And if you have more, just reach out. We can chat, whatever. So this was Modern Odinism. And I've been John Norgrove. This has been Julie Norgrove. This has been the Horn
and Cauldron
podcast. And we will catch you guys next time. Stay magical, folks.
Yeah.